Hi, this is Christina Morris with Get Healthy or Get Dead. Today I am joined with Sharon Burns, and I met Sharon through her son and learned about their family story. And I wanted to talk to Sharon and share her story with all of you. Without further ado, I'm going to let Sharon introduce herself and start with her story.
Thanks very much, Christina. My name is Sharon Burns. We're going to sit here and talk about my husband, Michael. Um, I've been married to him for 42 years. I'd known him 50. And anyway, he went into the hospital and didn't come out. Uh, so you want me to go ahead and start with the beginning
Yeah,
when he got sick?
and let's explain to everybody about your husband being in the Air Force and which
Right,
hospital that he went to,
right,
so people have
right.
a full idea of what's going on.
Okay, my husband was a Air Force retiree, and we we live in the Fort Walton Beach area, Florida, and he took sick and went into Eglin Air Force Base in August of 2020. Um, and that was he really wanted to be in there. He was really concerned about the care at the hospital there, and he felt he could trust them because when you go in there, it's always been through our whole experience with the military, which was 45 years. Um, he always trusted them because band of brothers, they're gonna take care of you because you're one of us.
Right.
And so that's made him very comfortable about going in there during this crisis time in August of 2020. Um,
And plus,
and
you think military, they're getting the best care, right? Like they're
yes,
cutting edge therapies because we actually want to preserve our military.
and there was a time of that where we did have cutting edge and we had what I felt the best. I never had any problems at all with any of the doctors in my 40 years.
Mhm.
Um, so this was a good thing. I was comfortable that he was in good hands,
Right.
uh, not knowing that things had changed through the years. I hadn't noticed. Um, but anyway, he took sick the end of July, actually. By the time we got him to the hospital, it was August 3rd. At the same time, I'm coming down with COVID as well. Really didn't know it at the time. And my youngest son was also coming down with the COVID. We were all in the same house. We all got sick, um, but we all had different levels. I never went to the hospital, and both Greg and my husband Mike went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Um, so um, he was sick. He started to feel what he thought was just a cold. It started that way on a Wednesday, but by the weekend, he was really taken to his bed, and by Sunday, he never even came out of the room.
Yeah.
And so Monday morning, I told him, I said, we got to go. You got to go in because we got to find out what's wrong with you. So I took him in, and I watched him walk in, and then I parked the car and walked in, and they wouldn't let me in because they said I had a fever. Um, I didn't realize I had a fever. It was 95 degrees outside.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even thinking I was sick. So I went back to my car and I sat there for 3 hours in that car and didn't hear anything. Nobody called me, no nothing. So finally I couldn't take it anymore. I called and the nurse told me that he had COVID and they were going to admit him and that she would have him call me. And he did call me and I talked to him for a little while, but it obviously became apparent that the last time I was ever going to see him was when he walked into the hospital, um, which is really difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I don't really remember who called when. I don't even know that I heard from him the rest of the day. Uh, Finally, I did call and they told me that that he was being given, they were taking care of him and everything was going to be fine. They were getting everything under control. He went in with sepsis. Um, he couldn't breathe very well. His oxygen levels were low. He had, his liver and kidney numbers were out of whack as well.
Yeah.
So they would take care of all that. And then I do believe I got a text from him later in the evening after he'd settled in. I had, the whole time he was in there, I had one phone conversation with him, which was like the next day, I believe. He told me to bring him some things. So he was already in that 24 hours, he was already feeling better.
Yeah.
So, and it got better. He got better for the next 4 days. And he sent me a text and saying that they were going to wean him off the CPAP.
Right, because he was never intubated. I just want everyone
Never intubated. He refused the intubation. But unfortunately, we didn't know about the drugs. I didn't really know that much about remdesivir at that point. I knew about the no ventilation.
Yeah.
Don't ventilate. And then at the same time, I didn't know the other things. Again, I'm still thinking he's in good hands.
Yeah.
He's in good hands. And no matter what was happening on the outside, I had this fairy tale dream that everything was going to be okay in the base hospital.
Right.
And in the meantime, my son is in a local hospital. We're not hearing from him either. I understand too that he refused ventilation. And I'm getting sick. I'm sick. Now I'm in bed. So I was pretty alone.
Yeah.
And then I did have a friend here. She kept an eye on me, but I stayed in the room too. I had no energy. I lost everything. So I didn't even remember what days it was. Now I'm so sick.
Yeah.
But I'm getting the information from Mike that he's improving, like I said, in those 4 days. And then at the end of I guess it was the 4th day, that night, I got a phone call from a doctor. Yay, I finally talked to a doctor. And the doctor told me he was doing better. And he said, but we've got to watch, he said, because there's the critical days, of 5 through 11, I believe.
Right.
And I'm going, like, what does that mean? Later, I found out that, you get remdesivir after 5 days, that, you could be a goner.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So he was kind of warning me. Anyway, it like clockwork, the next day, something starts to go wrong.
Yeah.
And then the next day, he's got a pneumothoracis, pneumodiacium. He's got subcutaneous emphysema.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He's got,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
All these things that are happening. But what I'm not knowing, because I don't really remember talking to a doctor again until about the 7th day. And they're telling me he's really bad by the 7th day. And then something else besides all of that he had. And I didn't talk to him. I wasn't talking to him. The only thing that I got, he wasn't texting anymore. And obviously he had the BiPAP, CPAP,
yeah,
the nasal cannula, and just putting the oxygen in, just, over oxygenating at this point, and so I get the phone call telling me that he's doing bad. And I said, please get a priest in there. And they said, yes, he's had a priest. I'm thankful for that. And I didn't hear from him. I will tell you, they tried to do a Zoom call for us or some sort of a phone chat. We didn't have the phone equipment for it. Still using flip phones.
Yeah.
So that didn't work out. So I never really did talk to him. It was mostly, he didn't even stop texting. I didn't hear from him. I'd say the last day I really heard from him was that 4th day. And I think he just kind of started to lose. He was getting agitated, very agitated. The nurses told me,
he was energy to survive in there. Like you have, it drains your body. And
Right.
I want to touch on the care because I was in the Netherlands at the time working in the ICUs caring for COVID patients. So I like to give people the contrast to know how it actually was during the pandemic.
Well,
And it's really actually sad because even there, the families were separated from their family members who were in the units. Although in the Netherlands where I worked, we were actually, during the shift, making contact with the family, actually reaching out and giving the family updates, and the families were always encouraged to call. And when a family member, and you'll get to this part of the story, but when a family member looked like they were going to pass, we actually let the family come in and spend time with the patients. We always did, like, before that point, we would do video chats and, make sure that people had contact. But even then, it's unheard of not allowing family members in to see patients in the ICU and on the floors. Like, you're always allowed to have visitation. You can't all come at once, and there's definitely visitation hours because patients do need time to rest and recover in
right.
between. But the whole way that families and patients were treated during COVID was very unusual, and it's not normal. And I just want people to be aware of that and know that this happened and know that people were actually denied care. And even the treatments that Mike had were the standard protocol, but as a healthcare provider, you weren't always allowed to discuss other things that may work. You weren't allowed to talk about those things. And I know actually at Eglin they did have ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine in their treatment protocols. I'm confused why that wasn't used with these patients, but because a pharmacist told me, that's why I know this information, because it mimicked the FLCCC protocols, which is
Right.
organization I used to work for during the pandemic. We literally saved millions of people's lives
Yes,
with
you did.
our life-saving therapies, which might could have benefited from the Math Plus protocol with high dose vitamin C and with steroids, because he went in with sepsis. And vitamin C is one of the main key ingredients for treating sepsis and treating COVID. So I want to get back to your story now. I had to interject all
No,
that.
that's all good. That's all good because it jogs my memory. Um, he was given um, he was given vitamin C. At this point, I didn't look close enough to see exactly how much he was getting. I don't know how much, because that's important too. The dosage of all these
Very
things is
much so.
important.
Mhm.
As far as I can tell, the COVID protocol in the hospitals was blanket. Some hospitals may have gone off and done some things, but the protocol was remdesivir, dexamethasone, um, albuterol, and a few other things that I can't remember. Begins with a T, Talisabob. Um, anyway, ends with a Bob, MMAUB. Those things were like standard. And I discovered after Mike passed that there
Tocilizumab.
was a COVID standard of care.
Tocilizumab was the drug. Sorry.
What is it?
Tocilizumab. It's
Yeah,
another drug that
yeah.
doesn't work.
I was like, I can see the writing, but I can't.
Yeah, it's another drug that
Anyway,
doesn't work anyway.
anyway, all those things were done in dosages that really weren't necessarily going to work.
Right.
And that was the new standard of care, was the COVID standard of care. And all these hospitals, like I said, some went and did good things, but the other ones followed. As long as you got that remdesivir, it was everything. It was a package. Okay. It was the protocol.
Right.
And during the time he was in, it was during that time of that emergency use authorization for the remdesivir. So whether or not he was told that this is a test, we're not, this is a test. I don't know, because of the fact of what you said, nobody was allowed in.
Right.
Once he got up into that ICU, even if I wasn't sick, I wasn't going to get in.
No.
None of my children could get in. There's nobody getting in. So what ended up happening is he got the standard of care. Whether or not, I do know other people that went into hospitals and the week before they went in, the hospital was using ivermectin, and high dose vitamin C and hydrochloroquine. And then they get in there and the hospital stopped it. You couldn't get it now. So yeah, we knew it was there, but
I
they
have to
were
interject on this
told
part.
they can't use it.
I have to interject and let people know that this was so severe that hospitals were denying this treatment that like family members would go in and have it arranged that a physician and a nurse would come in to deliver those medications and they would be denied. There was even a story.
Absolutely.
There was an email that I answered about a family who tried to go in and get ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, like basically the FLCCC protocols, into their family member, and they actually called the police on the family and barred them from seeing the patient. Like this really happened. This all really happened. I want people
Yes, they do.
your
Yes,
story really happened, and it happened to lots of people.
it
And your
did.
husband, Mike, is an example, and your family is an example of what happened. And so go ahead. I'm sorry. I had to interject
So,
that.
so what did happen was, um, on that fourth day, fifth day, he had developed an infection. Okay, he had a lung infection. His lung was collapsed, and they did nothing. They just kept, according to a doctor who reviewed his records, they just kept giving him the COVID protocol. They added, um, they just kept giving him albuterol and not really taking care of the infection that he had in his lungs.
Yeah.
So because of that, the oxygen they were giving him wasn't getting into his cells. And what they needed to get rid of that, they needed to give him a high dose corticosteroid, which he didn't get.
And vitamin C at this point too. That also can help
Yeah,
reverse
yeah,
the damage.
yeah. And then a decent antibiotic that was going to kick some butt.
Yeah, because there were a lot that
And
had side effects that actually targeted the virus.
yes, yes. That's so. Anyway, basically, from that point of view, with what they did for him, they were basically doing nothing.
Mhm.
They were not getting rid of that infection in his lungs. And until they got rid of that infection in his lungs, they couldn't get the oxygen into his cells.
Mhm.
So he basically died from an untreated secondary pneumonia.
Yeah, and multi-system organ failure from the remdesivir and from the
Yes.
inflammation caused
Yeah,
by the immune response to the virus. Because
exactly.
I want people to understand that it's not necessarily the virus that was deadly. What was killing people was the fact that the virus caused inflammation in the lungs and the rest of the body and the different organ systems, which caused people to be sick and die. And then when you intubated people, putting the breathing tube in, it made it all worse. So that's why it
Exactly.
was really important for people to get ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, or any of the other therapies that have been shown to work
Mm-hmm.
treating the virus early, like very, very early, because it would have reduced the inflammation and people would have been fine.
Most of the people who were going in, including my husband and my son, had already more than likely left their viral phase and
Hmm.
were already into the what's the next
The
phase?
inflammation
Cytokine
phase, you're
storm,
right.
inflammation.
Yes.
Um, and so we're treating the viral virus, and they already passed it. They already passed it. They need something else. So if they had been given the ivermectin in the ICU, not the ICU, the emergency room,
Yeah.
just going with that. So basically with him, it was, he did not die of the COVID. He did not die of comorbidities. He died of an untreated. Well, what they did was like being untreated because it wasn't going to help anything.
Right.
Okay. So they never got to the inflammation in his lungs to clean it out and then get that oxygen in there. And I had his records reviewed. Oh, let me get to that. So anyway, I got a phone call on August 11th, early in the morning, like 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I was told, Mrs. Burns, I'm sorry, but your husband's going to die today. And okay, then I went into shock. um, and basically, he said, he's going to have a massive heart attack today. and we're not going to be able to help him. And I said, to be honest with you, I was in shock. I didn't even say why. How do you
Yeah,
know
of
he's going to
course
have a
not.
massive heart attack? If
Yeah.
I had been there, I would know all this. So he said, well, he said, we're not going to be able to help him. And then he said, so your husband has agreed to a DNR and we're going to give him morphine to help him. And then they pulled the plug
I
on
didn't
the
know
oxygen.
they gave him morphine too. That's and
So
had Versed and morphine together because that will basically cause a patient to die.
right, it will cause a patient to die. But what you're being told is it just help. Yeah, it helps them in the dying process.
Yeah.
Okay, so they can pull the plug. And this is really tough. I'm trying to process this. And then he said to me, it will probably be a few hours and we will call you.
That's
They're
so
going to call me.
you up there. I can't even, but like that makes me want to rage again. Your story makes
Yeah.
me so upset. Like it really does.
So he said that there's nothing about anybody coming up. And I did have other children that weren't sick that could have gone up. And at that time, I didn't even have a fever anymore. So I probably could have gone too.
I want
But it was
to
like,
talk
we'll
about
call.
why that is. I want to talk about what you were doing at home for yourself, but we'll get to that after
Okay.
you finish your husband's story.
So anyway, that happened. And they did, and they called us, and that was it. He was gone. And I forgot about this, but during the time when he was at the funeral home, I sent my daughter and my daughter-in-law to go up there because I couldn't go. But they weren't allowed to even view the body.
That's so odd. That's
It
not
was
normal.
happening. It was happening.
Yeah.
So people got to know we were just like, it was a really strange time in America. It really was, and around the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that happened, and then finally, it all worked out. We ended up having a military funeral for him. And however, it didn't need to happen. I know God took him. I accept that, but at the same time, I want people to know you have to fight. You have to be present. You have to be proactive. There needed to be somebody in that room with him. I do believe he was taken care of. I don't believe he was one of the ones that suffered body sores and was abandoned because he didn't have a vaccination. I don't believe that. I believe he was taken care of. I just don't believe their procedures that they were using to take care of him are right. Because as that doctor told me, and I had 3 nurses look at his records as well, that doctor told me all they did was continue the COVID protocol.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's pretty much his case.
But you don't have all his records. Let's touch on that.
Oh, yes, that's right. I don't have all his records. That took me a while to get the records. There was a runaround at the hospital. That took a while. When I finally got them, I found out that I did not have all his records, that
You
all I
still
had
have all
was
his records. You still
all I had was hospital visits, because our doctors are actually in the military hospital, our regular doctors. So all I had was hospital doctor visits. There was no hospital records in there from his stay. I didn't know that until I had the first nurse look at it. And then so I went back, and that was a runaround. They didn't know where his records were, but they found them. Well, then I got those. But the second nurse who looked at him said, they're still not all here. You're missing nurses' notes. You're missing the MAR, the what is that? The MAR, the medicine administration records. Okay.
Yeah, sorry,
And
medicine. You're right, medicine records. Sorry. Yes.
yeah, the administration records. And I was missing, if I was missing anything to show that he had agreed, other than in the summary of his stay, it said that at the end he did agree to a DNR.
It's a paper
But I don't know.
sign though. There's a DNR status paper that patients or family members have to sign. So that should have been in that record too.
There was nothing in there. All it said was that I agreed to it when they called me.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there was another person present to hear that. And then a paper signed that they did it on the phone. That's not in there. And also what's really been missing, and nobody seems to have, is technically you were supposed to have a signed um, emergency use authorization, that you were notified that that remdesivir. So when he went in, there should have been him signing a paper, but that's pretty much been missing in most people's records
Yeah.
during that time, because it was, I believe it was April to October of 2020 that it was emergency use authorization needed to be signed. And then so yeah, records were missing. And I had to go look. I'm still looking for billing records. And again, there's no, we've exhausted all of his medical records as far as anything we can find.
Right.
And oh, incidentally, coincidentally, or not,
Right.
they're changing computer systems. So some of the records perhaps didn't get transferred to the new computer system.
They should have made backups though. I mean, if
Yeah,
there's
what you would think, but
made a backup.
hey, maybe we don't need nurses' notes. Okay, who needs that more?
Yeah.
And I do have pharmacy records, so I do have some idea what was ordered by doctors, but we don't know what was actually given.
Right. Right. Because with
So
with that MAR, with the medical administration record, it's actually, so people know, it's basically like a schedule with times, and you have to have a nurse sign off on it and the dosage and everything. And um, I believe it's two signatures. I don't remember anymore. It's been a few years since I've been in the hospital, but I do recall, at least for some drugs, the narcotics for sure, you need two signatures. So you do need it is something that's documented, during every single 24-hour period. So, and also, like, for instance, if you didn't need to give a patient medication, like for instance, if someone was basically very sleepy, they wouldn't need morphine. So you would basically write that the patient didn't need it, or the patient refused
right,
it, or whatever,
right,
and you would document that. So the fact that those records are missing is very suspect, and the medical legal papers that you're referring to that are missing, that's very suspect, and that is not normal. That should be in every patient record going into the hospital. And I just want to also tell people that anytime they go into the hospital, they should always make sure they have a copy of their records. I don't care what you're going in for. You need copies of your records, because you can't trust the hospital is documenting them correctly, or that they're not going to hide something. And I hate to say that, but like,
yes,
I don't trust hospitals anymore. Me being a medical provider, like, it's just, I really get worried every time a patient goes into the hospital. So I do actually want to touch on that. It's often helpful for families to consult a nurse advocate, or an advocate to come in and help with the family, maybe explain, the situation when they don't understand what the managing care providers in the hospital are explaining to the patient, or maybe they need help asking targeted questions to get clarification, like under the stress, like what you experienced, the trauma of being told all this news over the phone. I mean, yes, of course, you're in shock. You don't think of the questions that you need to ask in that
right,
situation. So it's helpful to have a person with expertise there by a family or patient side to ask those questions, to be that advocate that people need.
right. Exactly. That's what I'm pushing for now, and this is to get people aware of the fact you don't go into a hospital alone. Get an advocate, anybody who can come in, and if you could get somebody to stay 24 hours a day, because the stories that are out there, are shocking.
Yeah,
Mine is mild compared to this, to so many more people out there who were starved and segregated if they didn't have a vaccination.
true.
So there's plenty of stories out there. Well, I'll get it to the end on that one, but so for me, I was homesick again. I was sick like 5 days, really, really sick. I didn't even know my days.
Yeah.
I couldn't even remember if I had called the hospital that day. And by the way, I did have trouble getting through to the hospital sometimes. And then I found out later, well, there's only 4 beds in the ICU.
That's
What are
also
they doing?
interesting. There are 4 ICU patients. That's not like, I worked in a unit like 20 beds in the
Yeah,
ICU where I was. So like, that's even ridiculous. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
So And then I did get one phone call where they were upset with him um, because he wouldn't lay on his stomach. Uh, they said you can breathe better. Well, but the problem is that my husband had a terrible bad back. He could only lay like 5 minutes on his stomach, and then he can't move his back.
Yeah.
So going to lay on your stomach wasn't his fault. But the nurse mentioned that to me, that he's not laying on his stomach. It's like,
Yeah,
oh my God.
it's a nurse's position to figure out why that is and come up with a solution.
Yeah,
Like that's I'm not even going to begin to say things what I'm thinking. What like it doesn't make me very happy from a nursing perspective to hear
right.
commentary like that to a patient's family member of whom they're taking care of. Like it just anyway. Could we talk about what you were doing for yourself while your son and Mike were in the hospital because you managed to stay out of the hospital and I want the listeners to know why that is, what you've been doing and
Mhm.
all of that because I
Well,
want people to understand that having a healthy lifestyle and making healthy choices will keep you out of the hospital and keep you in better shape if you have a good, strong immune system.
and that's the key. The immune system. Well, I'm going to be here to tell you that I've never had a flu shot in my life. I don't go to the doctors very often, except now and then I get a sinus infection. I try to stay away. Um, and about 25 years ago, I started to get into um, natural foods, and which I haven't been really great at, but I have been faithful to my natural supplements. So whenever I got sick or felt that I was getting sick, I was already taking the supplements daily. But when I get sick, I increase the dosage on my vitamin C. I'm a big lover of garlic, and increased my garlic, increased my vitamin C, increased vitamin D. So I was home doing that
Yeah.
and drinking fluids, and that's it. But it was mostly all the fact that I began to megadose,
Well, how
and
much,
that's
let's talk about how much were you taking? Because some people
um,
are scared of
I
vitamin.
was taking I was taking about 5,000 IU of the C, um, maybe six, because I might have probably even gone up more than that. But when I got sick, I used to take um, uh, 1,000 C every 4 hours.
Yeah. And that's not even
Okay.
high dose according to
No, that's not. But
Dr.
but
Levy.
it doesn't go by the RDA, so people
Yeah.
get worried.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was doing. And I'm sure that while I was sick, and because it was a weird sickness, I'm sure that I was more than that. I may have been taking three. And then the same with the garlic. I was taking lots of garlic. I was taking vitamin D, and I don't remember that how much I was taking. Um, I hadn't caught on to the zinc yet, the importance of zinc, but that's what I was doing for that. And then also with that, the company that I worked for had uh, a sickness, something you take when you're sick called defend and resist. And that included echinacea, elderberry, and several other things that were potent. So
Yeah.
that was my combination. I was taking a cocktail of vitamins and minerals.
And so I do want to mention, so you weren't, were you taking ivermectin?
No,
So I
no,
just
because I
understand that.
really,
Yeah.
really couldn't get. We
Yeah.
didn't even know what to do, and um, I don't even know if at that point I had even. I was just finding out about the FLCC and just finding out about myfreedoctor.com, and so it was all in the beginning.
Yeah.
The only thing I knew about was I didn't know about ivermectin. I was actually trying to get hydrochloroquine, and I had a friend who worked for a doctor, and he couldn't prescribe the hydrochloroquine, so we were all drinking tonic water,
Yeah. With
the,
quinine in it. Yeah.
the quinine water.
Well, I do. So the reason why I'm bringing up the ivermectin is because ivermectin got demonized during the entire
Oh, sure.
people killer as poison, all this stuff. The FDA had a big, campaign against it. But I just want to kind of make full circle on the whole ivermectin thing. There were lots of things that, given in the right doses, could have helped reduce the inflammation and prevent getting sick with COVID. Ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were two tools in the tool shed. There are several
Right,
things, but if people have a strong basis, a strong immune system basis, and make healthy choices, make healthy diet choices, get enough sunlight, enough sleep, are hydrated enough, take basic essentials like D3, like you mentioned, and vitamin C, and just have that on, a daily like schedule of nutraceuticals or foods that supplement those things.
right.
Although you can't really get your therapeutic amounts of vitamin C necessarily from foods in general, unless you're eating a lot of leafy greens, a
A
lot of,
lot,
yeah, you really have to kind of supplement.
or eating an awful lot of oranges, you know?
And then you have your fructose, which, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not saying that fruit's bad, but any excess of sugar is not very
yeah. You
harmonious
don't
for
want to
the
give
body.
them
And the
healthy.
guts and having a healthy, balanced gut. So,
Oh, that's the other thing too. I was taking my probiotics as well.
yeah. And that's so important. Like the gut is linked to the lung, the brain, the heart, to everything. And when the bacterial flora get out of balance, it
Right,
can tend to make people sicker, especially when you're in that situation where you're ill. Like, it's really important to support the gut when you are sick. So I just I'm glad that well, I'm not glad about your story, but I'm glad that we do have the contrast within your family to show the different way
right.
of how you got through the virus.
I got through with that. And before my husband went in, he was taking these things too.
Yeah,
But of course, everything stops when you go in there.
right.
And he did get better on the fourth day. Um, so what happened? Like there's that shift and that, okay, you're getting better, but that's where I think the remdesivir came in
Oh yeah.
because
It'll kill your
it
kidney.
was like a 180,
Yeah.
So, and then of course my son was in the other one, and he got fairly decent care. As far he got the remdesivir, but he also got the I can't say it again,
I think
Benecidine.
you told me he had budesonide.
He had budesonide treatment as opposed to the albuterol. And then he also did get vitamin C, and I'm not really sure of the other things he got. Um, but I will mention this for all three of, well, the two of them, my husband and my son, both in the hospital. The thing that was the hardest for them and just about every patient was isolation.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on that too.
That was the key. In fact, it's hard for people because I work with people now that are coming forward with their stories, and one of the hardest things in the survivors was talking about the isolation. Even if you were, they gave up talking on their cell phones, or sometimes their cell phones were taken away from them.
Way.
Yes, and they gave up talking on the cell phones. The families couldn't get in. They felt abandoned. They felt they it was isolation. Well, how long can a person go in isolation? After several days, you start, having hallucinations and whatever else, anything you
Your
compensate with.
circadian rhythm is disturbed in the hospital because of the constant check in and out, the lighting, all that stuff.
That is true. I haven't even thought about that. That is true.
Yeah, there's tube lighting in all the rooms. You have the basically the blue light coming from the monitors, and literally there's in the ICU you're checking the patients every 2 to 4 hours depending on their
Mhm.
acuity level. And if you understand circadian rhythm, and you try not to wake up the patient if they're sleeping, you try not to, or you try to do your care, so you're allow them to have longer periods of rest. They can rest and recover, unless you're just don't really think about those things and you're just like following protocols and just going in.
Yes. Well, there's where you nailed it.
Yeah, I
They're all
know.
following protocol, and they're not being nurses and doctors anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and then one other thing, in not all hospitals, but in a lot of the stories I hear, is that the nurses didn't want to go into the rooms. So they were
Yeah.
literally watching just through the ICU windows, and some of them would even pull the pull the equipment out into the hallway so that they wouldn't have to go in.
That's so ridiculous.
It,
Well, so I wanted, because we talked about that on the phone. You and I talked the other day, but you mentioned that some of the doctors, like the pulmonologists, didn't even make a call. I'll tell you from where I was when I was in the Netherlands in the isolation. There were healthcare providers who basically avoided the COVID units because they didn't want to put on all the isolation gear, which in hindsight we didn't even need because no one was in the infectious phase anymore. But like
that's right.
and like for the nurses, like, well, every hospital was different, but where I was, we basically stayed in that isolation gear for, for nonstop for 4 hours. We were switching um gloves and washing hands and stuff, but we had the whole suits and everything on.
Mhm.
And so like people didn't want to get dressed up to go into the units, or they were afraid they were going to get COVID and die. And the thing is, it's also very frustrating because I did this because I was following the FLCCC early on when I caught Dr. Corey testifying in Congress for steroids and then for ivermectin. If the healthcare providers just would have taken a preventative dose of ivermectin and gone into the units, they would have been fine. Because even my personal story, both of my parents got sick at the same time, around the same time your family got sick, and I was in the Netherlands at the time, so I flew back to take care of them. And the hospital where my father was at, University of Alabama at Birmingham, they denied ivermectin to my father, denied. He already had the prescription, and so my mother and I got him out of the hospital, got him home, and my cousin, Dr. Philip Triantos, and myself, he made sure the prescriptions were ordered. And basically, Philip and I were the care team for my father. And my mother was getting sick, but we basically had oxygen at home for my father and gave him ivermectin. Within 24 hours, he was much better. And within 48 hours, he was off of oxygen. And my father is not, he doesn't have like an oxygen dependency issue. He does have COPD and lots of other comorbidities, but it was because of that that saved his life. And I came into the house and I just started taking ivermectin just to kind of ensure that I could pass that PCR test to get
Mhm.
back to the Netherlands to go home, and also just protect myself from getting sick. But I was also taking the vitamin C and the vitamin D and quercetin and everything else that was in the FLCCC protocols at the time. So all that fear was so unnecessary, and all that isolation for patients, it really will wear on your mental health. And the fact they're not getting vitamin D and all their other electrolytes are out of balance, it makes your mental health worse.
So
Disturbance.
there was a lot of those that going on, with the mental health after you leave. I just thought of another story when you're talking about the ivermectin, because I have another son who also got sick the following year
Oh.
with COVID.
Mhm.
He took ivermectin and the monoclonal antibodies and was feeling good within just a few hours.
Yeah.
And so there's a comparison there.
Yeah.
Didn't have to go into the hospital or anything, and but the rest of us are all left with various forms of PTSD. Um,
PTSD, and I think maybe some long COVID symptoms. When I was talking to your son, he was describing some symptoms that would fall into that category. And I just wanted people to also know that if they do have like fatigue, brain fog, some sort of lingering symptoms where you don't feel right, it could be long COVID, and that is completely treatable. And the way to do that is to basically go see somebody, do a summary of what's going on with symptoms, and if needed, check labs, and then get diet, movement, nutrition, and hydration in a check. All of this stuff is can be corrected, and you don't necessarily need ivermectin. Although if you do have severe symptoms, you might need some medical therapy support like low dose naltrexone, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, some other things. So there is actually help for
right.
people who do have lingering symptoms, and I just want people to know that as well.
Yes, agree. So that's where we stand right now. And so what ended up happening, particularly with me, and I was very thankful that Greg was able to come out of it. And I'm thankful that hospital that he was in that actually seemed to do things right. They didn't really abandon him. But it doesn't stop the isolation. You can't see your family. You don't feel like making phone calls. And so what you do is you let your cell phone go, you know, it dies and they don't call you, they don't know what's going on. So, and we also didn't get, the bad thing is though, from a lot of the people that I know that couldn't go in, the hospitals were not proactive in keeping the families in the loop at all. It was almost like and if you called some of these places, they were feeling like they didn't want to be bothered with you.
Yeah.
So again, back to my thing, mine was military, and that's what I'm working on now, to make sure that the military hospitals have a workover, and I know things have got to change. Things have got to change. Um, and to know that there are people out there, if you hear this, because I also have found that there's people that, like me, where we told that my husband was going to die, you have these lingering questions. I went 3 years in a fog. And then I woke up at his third anniversary and I said to my children, we've got to get answers. We've got to know what your husband's going to die today. He's going to have a massive heart attack and we can't help him. What did that mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's when we began our search. And it led me into different places. I discovered that there are people out there that are rescuing people from hospitals from bad care. And hospitals don't necessarily let you out once you're in.
Yeah.
Sometimes the police have to get involved.
Yeah.
And there are rescue teams around the country that literally go in and get you the care you need, or they get you out.
Yep.
What world do we live in now?
I know it's bizarre. This is not healthcare. This is really not healthcare. This is not what I was taught when I went into school, or what we learned years ago. Nowadays, they're not teaching medical, like up and coming medical people, about nutrition and about, holistic care. And that sounds, I know people think holistic care, that's very woo woo, but it's not. It's like basic biology that you're addressing to correct an imbalance. It is not woo woo. There is a reason why our bodies run the way they do. And when symptoms are treated and underlying causes are not, it causes people to get out of whack. And it's better to stay ahead of that and to basically, quote unquote, check your oil like a car and keep that in check so you don't get out of whack. And so you can be in the position to be able to fight if you get sick,
Yeah. I just want to throw in something too that happened to all of us, everybody that I have talked to. The organization that I'm involved with, which I'll give you at the end,
Please.
Is we've got up to 1,500 people already have told stories. Some are on record, some are videotaped, and we've got more in the queue. And more people get out there and they go, that's what happened. Because there are people sitting at home going, I know something's not right. Some people are thinking, did they actually kill my loved ones? And you put that out of your head. You don't want to think that that could possibly happen. But when you have people look at your records, very important, like you said, to get records. When you have people look at your records, they're like, this happened and this happened and this happened. So it's really important to help people and to be aware, to try. Oh, what I was saying was that most of the people that I talk to have no desire whatsoever to go near a doctor or a hospital.
Yeah. I don't either. I'm a nurse. I don't want to go near any of those people.
You don't want to go. Well, look at how many nurses have quit. Look at how nurses have started organizations like yours where you can help people from home.
Well, I'm launching my own practice June 1st. It's going to be a functional medicine coaching business where I will be addressing underlying imbalances and helping people with nutrition and movement and hydration and sleep and all and also stress reduction. So there are more people like me that are doing that and have been doing it. I just waited too long. I don't know why I waited as long as I did in practice, but I was very involved with LCCC at the time and I'm no longer with them. So now I'm I really want to make a difference and help people like Mike and other people and your family. And I don't want people to forget what happened. And I want people to be better trained and educated when they do get in the situation, if they have to go into those places. So
this is a time as monumental as, say, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 9/11. COVID should not be forgotten only because it was a illness that took over the world. it should be remembered. It should be a turning point in medicine throughout the world.
Yes.
Maybe a turning point in going backwards to the original means.
Yes.
My motto, I always think of my great grandfather that always said, never go to the hospital unless you're going to die. You know, you just don't go to the hospital. And there's this one doctor in the area that's even considering maybe doing house calls again,
That's great.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um it might be the new wave may be the old wave.
I hope so. Because
the
that
original the
I
original things.
I just wanted to touch on military and veteran care though, because
Yes,
that's a very big soft
that's
spot for me because I have
me
so
too.
many
Yep.
friends that are vaccine injured or they have untreated PTSD or they have anthrax vaccine injury or or they're just not getting the care they need. We I'm hoping with this new administration that we're going to raise more awareness for those needs and the people like your family who have long COVID or the people who have vaccine injury. I want the military to set aside funding so they can go get treatment with people who actually know how to treat these people.
Yes.
People like me and other people in my world, my other colleagues, because all of these things are treatable. It's like Lyme disease is treatable and
Yeah.
fibromyalgia is treatable. All these things, they just need to go to someone. Oh, by the way, cancer is treatable. They
Oh yes, I agree.
need to go to
I
people who know how to do these things and allow them to have some sort of like just have a fund set aside for them or their insurance, let their insurance cover it. Although I think insurance is a broken system too, but this treatment for people who can't file with insurance companies can be expensive for people who don't have the income. And it's not that providers like myself are trying to extort people, but we have to be able to support our businesses to help treat people. And so or at least I try to keep my prices reasonable and give a military discount, but I want I want the military and I want the VA to understand that people need to have the choices to go and seek treatment to qualified providers.
That's right. They shouldn't have to leave the country to go get treatment.
I know.
There should be the alternative is basically the old way, and it shouldn't be called alternative. It should be a choice.
Yeah.
And I just agree with you that so much now has come out in the open, and it's time to make it known in the military world. And that's my primary mission now is to work to make this known in the military world. I want to find anybody who lost a loved one or survived a terrible stay during COVID or at any time actually, or had a bad hospital visit that didn't seem right. Importantly, though, if anybody died in a military hospital and as a family you feel that something wasn't right, please contact us or you or the organization that I'm with.
And who are you working with?
I'm with the Betrayal Project,
Is it a
and
nonprofit by chance?
yes,
Great.
uh, it's a betrayalproject.org. Also, it's on Twitter, and we've been working now for like 3 years, 3 4 years, I guess maybe 4 years. And doing what I said is they're collecting stories. It's basically a memory project to collect your stories so it will never be forgotten, and it's a Holocaust. It's a Holocaust in the military around the world. Well, we lost 1.5 million people in this country, and a lot of them could have survived
Yeah.
with the proper treatment.
Yeah.
Most of them. And so I have noticed that the military hospitals have been left out of the equation
Yeah.
because when you say military, people think VA.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that there's hospitals on bases.
Right.
So this is what we're searching for now is people who died on the bases. So right now in the organization, I'm the only one that's come forward that
Okay.
we know of because there's interviewers that will take your story and it will be put into it can be used if you want to use it somewhere, it can be used
Right.
to go on podcasts or whatever. And people are also, some of us more like me are going on podcasts as well.
Great. Do you have any upcoming interviews that
I
people?
don't do interviews.
Okay.
I will talk to people and then I will send them. I will talk to people, but I will send them to the proper people who will do the interviews.
Okay.
It's hard to do interviews because you are you are a survivor yourself,
Yeah.
and you're reliving every time you do an interview, you're reliving through their pain, you're reliving your own pain.
Yeah.
But it's worth it to, because every single person that tells their story says at the end, it was like a release. It's a release. It was healing. It's
Yeah.
very healing to tell your story and know that you could be helping other people.
Yes.
So that's the mission. So it's the betrayalproject.org.
Can the vaccine injured military who were forced to take the shot, can they also contact y'all to share their story of how they're not?
Yes, we do have plenty of vaccine injured people, really, really seriously vaccine injured. And we even talk to people around the world on our Twitter space on Saturday night. We end up talking to people around the world. In Australia, we've got people call in from Scotland. We even had a lady from Poland who learned enough English so that she could come on and tell her story.
Oh,
And we also have a lot of people from Canada,
yeah.
because in Canada, your answer, if you're severe, is, well, we do have euthanasia.
Yeah, I know.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah, I know. That's a real thing.
so the Twitter space is a place to go, that you can just go straight to us um, and tell your story.
Great. Well, I'm going to make sure that I have that information when
I will get that to you.
and I'm gonna write a blog about this too to go with the video. So there's
Okay.
both ways to hear the story. I really want to thank you for taking
You're
the time
welcome.
with me to share your
Thank
story.
you.
And
Thank you.
I think your story is going to change a lot of people's lives. And I'm very happy to have given you the space to tell your story.
Thank you very much.
Well, I will keep in touch and we'll
Yeah.
talk again another time.
Okay. And I'll text you the links. I probably already have, but I'll give it to you again for the Twitter space.
Great.
And
Awesome.
all
Well,
right. Thank you so
thank you
much.
so much.